Hello guys, welcome to part 5 in making an online Pokemon game. In this video we're going to be establishing a connection between two different clients. So as of right now, there's no way for one client to tell that there's another client connected, even though there is. So that's what I aim to fix this time. A bit of warning, there's probably going to be a lot of cuts in this because I usually write the code first and then record the video, like I write the code, then I delete it, and then rewrite it while recording. But I didn't do that this time because this is going to be quite a bit of code, and I didn't want to take the chance of accidentally forgetting to delete something and then not showing it off in the video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with going to the server and going to the core, and then I'm going to open up public source client. And I'm just going to separate these. So, didn't open. Core. For some reason. Okay, there we go. Sorry, it was, every time I opened client, it was closing core. So I'm just going to separate these off into two screens. So now I have the server on the left and the client on the right, just so I can look at both the codes at once. So the first thing we need to do is, well, we need a way to send information about one player to another. So we have an entity player, and here we can have a step event. And remember, step event just happens every frame, just constantly. And we can send information from the player to the server, and then send the information from the server back to the player. So I'm going to do client.send, and this is how I send information from one to the other. I'm going to send information. So what information do I need? I need to send the position. So what position is our player in? And that's going to use this dot position. And then we'll just leave it at that for now. There's something else I already know we'll need to add, but we'll add it in a second, and I'll show you why. And then we need a key for this. So this is just, what do we want this identifier to be, I guess, and we'll just call it movement, or we'll call it player movement. There. Okay. So now it's going to send this information off to the server. So now the server needs a way of telling that the information was received. So I'll do client, I'll do server dot on, then I'll do brackets, and in here I'll do a function. And this function is saying, what do you want to happen? Oh, and this function takes in data. So this is saying, what do we want to happen when the server receives this information? And so the data, by the way, is just everything that's contained within here. So what I want to do is once I receive it, I want to send that information off to every client. So I can do server.send, and then what do I want to send? I want to send data. I want to send all the data that was associated with it. And then I also want to send a key, so another key. So I would just say player movement. Okay, so now the player sends off the information about its position, the server receives it, and then sends it back off to every single client. So now we need to come to the client and say, what happens when we receive this? So when the client receives this, client.socket.on. So what do we want to happen when we say player movement? So when we receive this key, what do we want to happen? Well, I can write a function again, and I'm just going to write, for now, I'm just going to say, just see if it works, console.log, and then I'll just say hello, just to see that it's working. So I'm going to open these back up, and anytime you edit the server code, you have to come over here and restart the server. And to close it, you just push Control-C twice, and then it'll stop the server. And then node core to start up the server. And now I can refresh one of these. Okay, we got an error. So what's going on? Sorry about that, guys. I didn't even notice the error was actually coming up here. And the problem is, in server.on, well, server.on what? When we receive once we receive a key that says player movement, then we want to perform this function. So now I can rerun node _, and there we go. So now I just come back here, I can refresh this, and now we got a different error. Call stack size exceeded. Sorry for another cut. So this was just me not realizing what I was doing and just kind of going with the flow. When I was sending this dot position, well, what is this dot position? It's this class or this object instance. And this instance, if we go to it, contains the reference. It contains a reference to this whole entire player. And this player contains a lot of stuff about animations, images, movement, things that we don't need. And this error was telling us maximum call stack size exceeded, meaning we were sending way too much information. So if I just need the X and Y position, so I'll just say position X, position Y, and then position Y, this dot position dot Y. And now I didn't change the server, so I don't need to restart the server. So if I refresh this now, we're seeing hello a lot. Okay, but we don't want it to just say hello. We want it to do something else. Let's say, well, we could, first off, this requires this data. So that's, again, the data that's received through here. And this data is this. So let's look at this, console.log data. If I refresh this now, instead we'll see all of these, position X and position Y. So what position we're at. And if I move, those numbers start to change. So now we can see that. And if I come here, Control-Shift-I, I refresh. Now you'll notice it's like going, there's two different values that it's looking between. And that is, it's receiving this player and this player's X and Y. Okay, so we could say this dot X, this our players.x equals x and whatever. So what we need to do, so ignore what I just said, sorry. I was off in my own head. Let's go to the player. We need to make an array of players now. That way we can call on different players, I suppose. So this dot, or not this dot, var players, plural this time, and we'll create a JavaScript object with them, I guess. But instead, this time, I'm going to say, give this a name. I'm going to give each player a name. And this name will be the same as this name right here. And if you don't know what this is, these IDs are the different clients connecting. And each client has their own ID associated with them. And these IDs are unique to every single client every time they log on. So that way we can pass that into as a key for our array, and then we can store each player uniquely. So just like we did everywhere else, I believe I didn't do it in position, but in the raw map, when we were creating the raw map, it's the same thing as we're doing here. We have raw maps, we give it a name, and then we push it in to the array or the object using that name. Sorry if that was a bit confusing, but essentially I'm just going to say a little bit of lag there. Players, whoops, if I spell it right, players name equals this. There, now we can get a reference to that player based on the name. Let me close position. Okay, so now we don't know, when we send over this player movement, we send in the X and Y position, but we don't know who sent it. Like, was it us who sent it? Was it someone else who sent it? We don't know. So when we send in the X and Y, we also need to send in, and this is what I was talking about earlier, an ID. And this ID will be whatever the client.socket.id is. So that's how we get the this ID here, is we call on the client socket ID. So we're going to pass that in, and then that's going to be sent over to the server, and then all that information is going to be sent back to the client, where we can now receive it in this data. So now I can say player it would be data.id.x equals position equals data.position x, and then player data.id.y equals data, and this needs to be position dot the player's position dot x and the player's position dot y equals data dot position y. Now I'm pretty sure this is going to have an error if I refresh this. I think it's just lagging right now. Either that or it actually broke already. If I can refresh this one too. Is this even still open? Oh, so I had to push Control C here. Sometimes the server freezes and there's no indication of it. So you gotta come here and push Control C and it'll like unfreeze it. I don't know what causes it to freeze, but it's fine now. So yeah, we got a cannot read property position of undefined. That's what I thought would happen. So what's going on is that we haven't created another player yet. In fact, our player that we created initially in the main, we never gave it even a name, or an ID I should say. So here its name will be our clients dot socket dot ID. There we go. But now we need to say if there isn't a player that exists with this ID, we need to create one. So if player data.id, then we will set if this exists. So if this exists, then we'll set its ID. But if it doesn't exist, we're going to say new player, player, and the name will be data.id. And then I can say I'm going to copy that and paste it there so it does the same thing. And I could probably make this easier on myself. Just put that down here, remove it there, remove that else, and then say not. So if it doesn't exist, then we create it, and then we set its position. Okay. Now if I come here, hopefully this works. Cannot be reached. Okay. Oh, this I accidentally closed the server. It looks like node core, and hopefully it starts. There we go. Now if I refresh, cannot read property position of undefined again. So let's look at this. Console.log data, and then I'm going to say no loop. And no loop will just stop it from constantly repeating itself. So it's good for debugging. So let me refresh. I think this, did it freeze again? No, it's just lagging. Okay, now it's loading, I think. Now, okay, no, it didn't freeze. I'm just gonna restart the server. It's having a bit of lag. So refresh. Okay, cannot read property of undefined, but I logged this, and it has position, the ID, position X, position Y, but then ID is that, and that looks right. Here, let's look at players. Oh god, my fingers are in the wrong position. Players. We have one player with that, with the right ID. So why can't it read it? Sorry about that. So this was my bad. You guys might have noticed this, but I said player, but the name of the array was players, plural. So this just needs to be say players, players, and players. Now if I come back here and refresh, no errors, but you'll notice if I try to move, I turn and I do the animation, but I'm not actually moving. And that's because we're also setting our own position. And it's just, it's like, it's hard to explain. It's like, my player's trying to move, but then it sends the information back, and then I just jump back to where I was, so I'm never able to move. So I only want to update the position if it wasn't us who sent the information. I'm sorry if that doesn't make sense, but this is what we need to do. If player.id doesn't equal client.socket.id. So if the ID isn't our ID. So if it wasn't us who sent the information, essentially. And now hopefully it works. So there we go. I can now move. And if I come here and I refresh, cannot properly loaded when defined. One sec. So I told you there'll be a lot of cuts again. So the problem with the error here, the loaded error, that's before when we ran this main, we have client and init up here, but we might want to put that right there instead. And for the reason for that is this tends to run all of this. This runs and does the client and does the initialize before the setup even goes through, which means that this is all being run before the setup, which means we never had a chance to create the raw image or this raw map or any of that. So putting this down here will just help fix that. But you may have already noticed there's another glitch going on, and that has to do with this. This is just a nonsensical, no idea what's going on, and I couldn't tell you exactly what's going on, but I do know what the problem is. So here, actually, let me just open these back up. Oh, okay. I'm just going to close one of these tabs for a second and just look at if there's one player. So if I do that and I click and I look at players, the array of players, there's this first one, but the ID is undefined instead of what it should be, just that random string of characters. And that's because we do this, we make the client right after, or we make the player right after we make the client. So there was not enough time for us to connect to the server and get that ID. So the ID doesn't exist yet. So we don't want to create the player until after we've connected. And maybe there's a callback function in connect, I'm not sure. In fact, let me try console.log. Oh, no, this is a function. So I'm just testing something right now. This is just me experimenting. So if this works, this might be what we can just do, but it never said hello, which tells me that my theory was wrong. Okay, oh, well, that's fine. The way we're going to do this, and the way I'd planned anyway, is we're going to set up a function for when we connect. So under the server folder, go to libs and click server. So this is where the server is created, and we don't need to do too much here, so sorry that it's a mess. I'm just going to come to the bottom down here and say module.exports.connection. Well, I'll say on connect, because I don't know if it's going to if connect is going to conflict with some other actually built-in function. So I'll just do connect, or on connect, sorry, on connect, and then I'm just going to make it a blank array or blank function. Sorry, yeah, that should be a function, so I need to say equals function. I'm going to copy and paste that, and I'll do on disconnect. We won't use the disconnect yet. That's just for later. So I'm going to copy this and say on connect right here where we have the function new connection. I'm going to say module exports on connect and then do the bracket so it's calling that function. And then in this, we're going to pass in the socket. And I'm going to copy socket because I need to put socket down here as well. I'm pretty sure here also, but that should be good. Now I can close the server, and then I can come here, server.onConnect equals a function. Yeah, that's right, with a socket. So we're essentially overriding that function. So what do we want to do when this socket connects? What should we say that happens? Well, we want to send another thing to that one socket. So if I say socket.emit, this is going to emit a package or some data to that specific socket. Instead of sending it to every single person, it'll just send it to the one socket, which means that one client who connected. So what do we want to send? So the way emit works is backwards from the way I wrote up here. You do the key first and then the data. So I want to say on connect, and then I want to say socket.id. I don't think I actually need to put anything there, but just in case, I don't think I need any data, but yeah, just in case. So down here on the client side, I can say client.socket.on on connect. We want a function with data, and what do we want to happen? We want to say new player with data.id. And we could just say probably client.socket.id, which might be better, but I'm going to use this for now. And now under main, I don't think I need to create a new player. So hopefully this works. We edited the server, so we need to restart the server. Node core. Oh, nope, we got an error. Socket.emit on connect unexpected token socket.id. This needs an actual ID, we'll say. I think that's what I called it here, right? Sorry, client. Yeah, data.id. So ID colon and then the data. So let me start the server again. Nodes core. Okay, now different error. Okay. Here we said server.onConnect with brackets equals a function. That was bad syntax. Just remove those brackets that was there. Okay, node core. Okay, now it works. There we go. Refresh. Hopefully this is working better now. I'm gonna pray that we don't have any more errors. Oh, yep, that's definitely glitched out. I'm starting to really regret not recording this beforehand. So I figured out the problem was, and that was the problem I had was kind of silly, and I probably should have thought of this before. The player has a controller property, and that property is what lets us move it. But right now, every player has a controller, and we don't want to have our player be able to control. We don't want our movements to control every player, just ours, just only ours. So I'm going to create a property called hasController, or not a property, but an argument. So I'm only going to create this property if we say is hasController to true. And then we don't want to always have that, so I'll just come here and say if hasController, then this dot properties dot push this dot controller. Okay, so we're only going to add it in the controller property if we say to. Also, I want to save this name as a variable because I forgot to do that before. Oh gosh. Okay, sorry, I guess it was about to crash. Glad it didn't. So this dot name equals name. And the reason for that is another thing I'm doing is I'm sending our position. So the client, so right now the client has several players on the screen, one for each client that's connected. But we only want to send information about our own player, not about every other player. Every other player can send its own information. We only want to send information about ours. Hopefully that makes sense. So if this dot name equals client.socket.id. So if our ID is the same as the socket's ID, then we'll send our position. So now refresh. Oh, I almost forgot actually. In the client, now we need to make it so that the player, our player, the one that we create, does have a controller. So I'm just going to add that true. Okay, if I refresh this, I come here and I refresh this, I can move one and have the other people move as well. Now, animations don't play and directions don't change, but they're moving together. You might notice in this side there's a third player. And that's because we're not dealing with disconnection right now, but we'll deal with that later. So if you look, I can just refresh. Every time I refresh the page, it's adding in a new player because it never registers that disconnect and doesn't remove that player from the list. So I could just keep doing this until this guy refreshes and then it updates, but then this one now has an extra, so we'll fix that. That'll be a different thing. Right now I'll show you how to do changing directions and animations. So I mean, this is actually really easy. In the player, when we here, let me do this. Well, I'm gonna rewrite this so it's a little cleaner to look at. So I'm just gonna add in some new tabs, and there we go. Sorry, wait a minute. That there. Okay. So this is right here is all the information that gets sent. So I can add a new one called direction equals this dot image dot, and what is, there's a variable here, I'm pretty sure, in position, not position, image, animator, graphics, animator. So how does this tell? I believe it's cell X and cell, so it'd be cell Y, I believe. It's either cell Y or real Y. Let me check. When we set the X and Y, we do this dot set, which sets real X. Okay, so it's real X. So image dot real, well, not X in this case, Y. Okay, so that's the variable that gets our direction, what direction we're facing. And then we want to say is animating equals this dot controller dot, and what did we do for this controller? How does this know if we're animating? Controller user movement, that's what we called it. So in this property, do we even have a way to see if it's animating? It doesn't look like it. So we'll just have oh no, yeah, it's moving. If we're moving. Okay, so we just send that dot is moving. There we go. And I spelled that right, right? No, it's just moving. This dot moving, not is moving. Okay. I can close those now. Sorry if what I was just doing was confusing. I was just getting the direction and the whether or not we're moving. Now it sends over to the server. We receive it again. So I can say under here, I can copy this and say dot. And let's see. So what do we need to do? We need to say dot image dot set y to data dot direction. Copy a new one. The image dot animate. How is this gonna work? We'll do this one this way. We'll say dot image dot animate, but we're only going to animate it if data dot is moving. What do we call that? So under player is animating. So if data dot is animating is true, and I didn't need to put the is true or equals true, but I'm going to anyway. So if I refresh this, hopefully we don't get any errors. Refresh this. So it's not working, it looks like. Or we're getting error. Dot animate is not a function. That's because we need to say animate X. But the direction should have been changed. If I refresh both of these. So it's animating on both sides now, but the direction's not changing. When I set it, set X should have been a function. That's why. Set Y should have been a function. There we go. Now we should be good. There we go. So now if I'm moving on this side, by the way, and it's still updating on this side. In fact, it's updating on both sides, you can tell. So now the next step would probably be to deal with disconnecting. So I guess I don't know how long this video has been going, but we'll do it. We'll do it. So if it's too long a video, whatever, it'll be fine. I don't plan to make a video until Monday anyway, so this will be your treat for the weekend, if you consider this a treat. Okay, let's open up library server. Here we made this on disconnect. So I believe, actually I'm gonna have to check something. One sec, I'm gonna need to check something. Okay, sorry about that. I just needed to check where this on disconnect goes, and what it is there's a socket dot on. If you write disconnect, disconnect, and the function we want to run is this function. So I copy, paste that, and I'm on a different tab right now, just checking a different server that I have. So what I do is export on disconnect sockets. Yep, that looks like it's working. Client socket ID, socket, yep. Okay, hopefully this works. Hopefully. Going to pray. So, oh, I need to save that. Now I'm going to come here. Just like we have this on connect, we need to say server dot on disconnect, I believe we called it, equals a function with socket. I'm going to console.log that socket just to make sure that's working. I'm not sure though if it is. We're going to find out though. Control C, node core. Okay, so I'm just going to come to here and refresh it. Transport error. That's not what I wanted to see. Okay, 1 second then I guess. Let me check one more thing. A lot of cuts this video. It didn't even take that long. I was just not really thinking. So I don't pass in the socket. I never actually passed in the socket, so it would have no idea what socket to use. Where is it? Right here? Yeah. Yes. So I just have to first. This is weird. I'm putting a function inside of a function. Let me do it this way. But it'll work. Trust me. So that way I can just put in brackets and pass in socket now. And I was just checking on a different server, like I said. So I need to restart the server, of course. Control C, node core. If I come here and refresh. Oh, yep, okay. So it drew the entire socket. That is a lot. So instead, just to make it look better, I'll do socket.id and I'll make it red because connecting is green. So why not make this red, color.red, Control C, node core. If I refresh now, it didn't do it red. Okay, there we go. Okay, now it did it. So I refresh, it's showing that I first connected, and then when I refreshed, it did it but red. Okay, so now I can do socket.emit send. We'll call this send disconnect because again, I don't want conflicts with maybe emitting disconnect being something already. So disconnect. I don't know if I even spelled that right. And then who's disconnecting? So I'll say id socket.id. Okay, I'm gonna copy this just in case I spelled it wrong and I'm too lazy to check. Client.socket.on, and then that key. What do we want to do? We want to call this function using the data. And that something's wrong, I feel like. Yeah, that bracket should have been here. There we go. Okay, what do we want to do? We want to remove that socket. So I believe it's delete to delete a key from a JavaScript object. So we want to delete the players data.id. I'm gonna hope this works. Oh, while we're at it, objects also, because we push this into the players, but we also push it into the objects. So I need to loop through those objects for var I equals 0, I is less than objects.length I plus plus. If objects I'm going to move that down. Objects you'll see why in a second. If objects equals, players data.id, then objects.splice I1. So the reason I moved this down is because if we delete it up here, it'll be deleted and then we won't be able to use it in our check. So we'll just delete it after we've checked. Okay, and after that I can do break because there should only be one in there. So what is this doing? I loop through the objects and then I check if that object is the player that we're trying to delete or that disconnected. And then if it is, we splice it out of the array. So we remove it from the array. Whoa, I accidentally, there we go. Now I can refresh. Oh, I need to refresh this, don't I? Sorry, all those, if you saw all those appear, that was because the server froze. Node server, no, not server, node core. Is it gonna work? Sometimes the server takes a second to load. Okay, refresh. Here we go. Come here and refresh. Now, the player is working. If I refresh, moment of truth was not successful. It didn't remove. So let's look. Players, if we look at players, there should only be 2 players. If we look at objects, there's only 2 objects. Oh wait, we should look it on this side. Sorry. That was meaningless. Oh. I did not mean to click that. What am I clicking on? Oh gosh. Oh no. Sorry, this is looking bad. Console. I'm just gonna minimize that. Okay, players. So we didn't remove the players objects. Did we remove it from the objects? Okay, so what I think is going on is send disconnect isn't working. It's not emitting it. And that's because we're emitting it to the socket. That's why. Sorry, this should have been server.send. We need to send it to everybody. Right now, we're just sending it to the client that disconnected, but they disconnected, so they don't even care. Server.send, and the data is going to be ID, socket.id, and then I need to use this as the key. Okay, there we go. Add a semicolon, restart the server, node core. There we go. Now let's try this again. Second moment of truth. If I refresh on this side, oh no. So it's still not working. And if I look, more than likely, objects probably contains, 5. So I'm going to we'll do some debugging. I don't know if you want to see this. You can fast forward if you want. But it's nice to see some debugging to see how you would go about debugging this if this happened to you. If I refresh this, it said hello, which means it actually got it. So let's log the data then. Let's see if the data is even going through properly. Refresh. When I refresh this guy, this side, we got the ID, which is right. And when he refreshes, it's not removing them from the list, which is weird. I don't know if it's happening because of this or if this isn't being called. What about players? This player, so it got removed on players. So this check is wrong then. If objects player I, let's do something else then. Dot name if the name equals the ID, then maybe this will be a better check to do. Oh, if I refresh both sides, it already didn't work. Yeah. So, okay then. One sec while I figure this out. Again, I'm sorry for probably the bad quality video, but I've already gone too far. I've already come this far. I don't want to restart it now. Break! Breaks out of the loop. But I had wanted to break out of the loop only if this check was true. Because I didn't use brackets, it was doing it after the first index no matter what, and I just froze. Oh, there we go. So let me just add brackets there, and now it should be good. In fact, I know it'll be good because I just tested it and it finally works. Hopefully the sign didn't break in that time. So if I come here and I refresh on this side, it disappears here. So now we are good. We have players that can finally, what was I gonna say? We have players that can see each other. Now, one disclaimer about servers. Right now we're running off localhost 3000, which means you can't have this work right now on a different computer. And if you do, you just won't see each other because you need to host it on a server, which we'll get to later, hosting it on a server. I know one called ngrok, which we'll probably use at first, which is free, so that we can host it and you can have your friends try the game and play with you, or host it yourself, or buy a host. You could buy hosting services that will host it for you. But right now, for testing purposes, we're using localhost 3000, just a local server, because it's easier. But later, just know, we will set it up. But that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, see ya.